Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast. This podcast is designed for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to leave a legacy and will provide strategies that focus upon key elements for legacy creation, determining your desired impact and its benefit, increasing your legacy's reach by engaging key stakeholders, planning, prioritizing, and executing. Here's your host, Dr. Lois Sonstegard.
Welcome, everybody, to today's Building My Legacy podcast. I have with me today Lillian Ogbogoh. She is a fabulous speaker, and she does a lot of work with women looking at self-mastery, confidence building, and she has a podcast that she talks Shine Out Loud. It's a show that she uses to encourage women, owners of companies, CEOs, and creatives. And she has written several books and Success in High Heels. I think that's a fabulous title. Also, Born for This, The Journey to Success in Life, Love, and Business. She is a NLP trainer and coach. She is a corporate speaker and has done a lot of work with individuals and organizations. And so, Lillian, I'm really eager to hear from you. Introduce yourself a little bit, and then I want to talk about one of the things that you talk about a great deal, which is the 7 habits that rob women of their power. So I want to get into that, but first tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into this?
Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you, Louise, for having me on. Well, first of all, my last name is Ogbogoh. The H is silent, I know. And so I'm an NLP practitioner. I've been a trainer. I coach. I work with women. I'm also a hypnotherapist. Now, how did I get into this? So the very short story to this, I used to have an event company where I set up an event company with a friend of mine while at, just after graduating from university. And one of the things that I realized that was one of my biggest challenges was actually speaking in public. I hated the idea of opening my mouth and speaking in public. I would rather eat broken glass, covered in acid, covered in fire ants than speaking in public. And I had this event company where we were organizing events for women. And one of these events, we had a woman who was there talking about being fearless. And she was a coach. She used NLP. At that point, I'd never heard of NLP. And she talked about the abilities and changes that she can do with people and the changes that she can impact on people's lives. She did a couple of examples. And then I decided I needed to work with her. I needed what she had, because not on top of everything else, she had this inner kind of glow and just this real confidence about her that I'm like, if I could have 1/3 of what she had, I just felt like my world would be a lot better and I'll be able to deal with the whole speaking in public, because I knew that I had to do it for the business. I had to speak about the business. And every time I did, I felt like I was going to die. So started working with her, started working around NLP, decided that I wanted to become an NLP practitioner myself. And I went on and studied and I got certified as an NLP practitioner. From there, I kind of fell into doing training. I started working as a visiting tutor for a college out here in the UK. And I was teaching people life skills and personal development skills. And in between all of that, I was doing other work, and my work had always been around women. And I noticed different opportunities coming to my door. And one of the first opportunity that came for me to be part of a book project was a Success in High Heels. And that was a book project that involved women from across the globe. And we were talking about different levels of success. And I remember I wrote in that book and I used the metaphor talking about Aphrodite, about being able to speak up for what we want as women, and using Aphrodite and talking about how Aphrodite understood exactly that what she wants, she has to get. And for her to get that, she has to speak up for it. And she has to work for it in terms of how she showed up. And so that was my first introduction to that book. Then I created a book project of my own called Born for This, The Journey to Success in Life, Love, and Business. And that was looking at failure and how we seem to be success obsessed in in the world right now. It's all about you have to be successful out of the gate. And I'm like, but the thing is, what we never talk about is failure. And it's always, oh, no, we don't talk about failure. But the thing is, we cannot get to success without failure. We can't, it's an impossibility, because you have to get to success on your road to success is never linear. It's never you start and you're instantly successful. No, it's you start, you stop, you fall, you get up, you dust yourself off, you go, okay, that didn't work. What can I try again? And all the great people that we look out to and admire have all had series, not just once, but series of failures. And so it was all of that journey. And so that was what that book was about. And then my current book is the seven habits that rob us of our power as women. And this was a conversation. This came out from what I'd been doing in my own life, and also what other people had known done as well. And I started documenting the 7 habits that seem to occur in not just myself, but people in my circle, and looked at what will be the cure for these habits.
So what are the 7 habits? What is it that robs us? And I think it is so true. We have a lot of things that rob us. We just don't stop and think about it. And if we don't think about it, we can't be intentional about changing it.
Exactly. So the first habit, which is always the first one, is worrying yourself into fear. And once you get to fear, you can't think. The thing is, fear robs us of being rational. The moment we start, first of all, we get into the space where we're worried about the unknown. We're worried about the uncertainty. We're worried about what if this goes wrong. I don't know how many times I've found myself, I'm about to do something and I'm a little anxious and I go, what's the worst that could happen? And that's never a good question to ask yourself, is you go into something going, what's the worst that could happen? It's like, a building could fall on me. Oh, is that what you want to start looking for? Because I believe when we get to the point where we are afraid, and when we start worrying, and when we get to the point where we are in fear, we stop taking risks. We stop taking action. We withdraw. We get very scared to actually put ourselves out. And fear is one of those things that it's insipid, because sometimes we think that, oh, we're just being cautious, or we're just taking a moment. It's fear. We're afraid to show up, afraid that people will judge us, afraid that if we did show up, people will say something about us, afraid that what if we fail? And so fear keeps us stuck. And we as human beings are designed to grow. And being stuck over and over and over is the equivalent of what Einstein said about madness. And we call that stuck place our comfort zone, but we're stuck because we're afraid that if we stepped out, what is the worst that could happen?
Wow, that is so true. Yeah, go on.
And that's just one of the fears. The other one is, when we actually stop seeing ourselves, and I call this fear is looking through the not enoughness mirror, where we spend our time. Do you remember Snow White, the story of Snow White, where the evil stepmother goes, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? It's like we are traded that story for mirror, mirror on the wall, who is better than me? And we go out looking at, when we are in this space of feeling not good enough, we're always thinking somebody else is better than us. We're always thinking we're not good enough to get what we want. Somebody else is going to get it. There's not enough for me. I'm not good enough to have that job. I'm not good enough to have that relationship. Oh, that person's out of my league. Oh, I can't apply for this job because I need to go and get 10 different other qualifications before I'm good enough to apply for a job. I cannot be in those executive rooms. I can't make those decisions. I am not good enough. And when we are in that space of not good enough, we open ourselves to the imposter syndrome. When we start then taking apart every success we've ever had, saying, well, the only reason I was successful at doing X, Y, and Z was the stars were aligned, or somebody didn't know that, I wasn't quite good enough. So they basically gave me a punt, or somebody who actually should have gotten the job was sick, and so they hired me instead. When we are in that place of feeling not good enough, we do not see who we are. We do not see how good we are. We not see our own power. And what happens is we start to project that into the world, and the world will respond to us exactly how we are putting out.
Isn't that the truth? And I think that's some of the things that especially Gallup has talked about so much. And that is, if we focus on weakness, we get more weakness. If we focus on our strengths, we get more strengths. But we're trained to focus on weaknesses because that's what we are taught in school, right?
Yeah.
It's always, you get a paper back with the red marks and you go, okay, fix that, fix that, fix that. Rather than, wow, I got 98 correct.
Exactly. We always look at the flaws. We always go, well, especially for us as women, and I know I'm speaking very generally, when we want to apply for a job role, we're like, oh, we read the job description. We may be 80% there. And yet we'll go, yeah, I don't think I can apply for this because, maybe I need to get some more qualification, or I should do a master's, or, you know what, let me go and get this other skill set before I apply. Whereas we'll call him Frank. Frank is like, oh, let me look at this job description. I'm about 50%. I'm gonna go for it. Frank will go for it. Frank will show up. Frank will be like, let's try this and see. And Frank is present. Now, Frank has this whole belief that I'm good enough, so I'll apply. And he turns up. Whether he has the skills or not, sometimes Frank gets the job. And you're left looking at going, how did Frank get that promotion? Because he put his hand up, because he applied. He showed up. But we are the person that holds ourselves back the most before somebody else is holding us back. And that's one of the things. And these were the habits. And I was looking at how many times I have actually put myself in a position where I've looked at something and I've shrank away from actually applying for that job, or I shrank away from saying, I'm going to reach out and get that client because I felt maybe I'm not yet ready, or, you know what, let me go and do something else first. Let me go and work on my website so I look more appealing. Let me do X, Y, and Z. And then the opportunity passes, and then you're stuck kicking yourself. And then you go, look, then you go back to the not good enough. And then you go back to the fear. And then you go, oh, see, universe, I wasn't ready. And so let me go back and do 10 more courses to prove I can be ready. And we hold ourselves back and rob ourselves of what we want the most.
It's such a great analogy. We do rob ourselves. And what's amazing is the cyclical nature of that. If you let that fear begin, it begins to escalate. You feel the rejection. Yes. So now you feel more of the fear, and it just begins to go around and around, and getting out of that and changing the trajectory. If you do it enough times, it starts to get to be hard work, doesn't it?
It does. It does get to be hard work. But, the thing is, it's never a one-time fix. It's not like you pop a pill and it's done. We have to keep being mindful and being intentional, because it's sometimes we are undoing not just our stuff. We're undoing a generational of stuff of women in your family, the societal stuff that has somehow seeped into us and we have embodied. And so it takes time to unpack, to remove, and then find that your own powerful voice, and then take ownership. It takes time to build that relationship. It takes time, but the work is so worth it.
So what else do we do that robs ourselves of that success that we want?
Well, the one thing that I'll speak of one more, and I think the one that is really it's dressed up to look like a very powerful way of being is the I am Miss Super Wonder Woman. I do not need any help. I am totally independent. I can do this by myself all the time, 24/7. And I'm like, that's a fun thing because it sounds empowering. It sounds great. It's of robbing ourselves of being able to ask for help, being vulnerable when we need it. When we make mistakes, we withdraw because we don't want anyone to know. We rob ourselves of the ability to learn from others. We rob ourselves of being able to be mentored by others, or even share knowledge and share that common thread. The I would do it by myself is the first rung to get into burnout. Because if you're always, I will do this by myself, no matter what is on your plate, no matter what's going on with you, you keep piling on and piling on and piling on and piling on. That's the first road to burnout, because you're not asking for help. You're not asking your loved ones to delegate. You're not asking for people in your life to support you. You're not asking for the support that you need. And having that support, having that network behind you is powerful.
You know, it is powerful. And I don't think we give enough attention to burnout. And I think part of that from just what you've described is, along with that superwoman perspective or Superman, either way, is that sense of, but I have to be more perfect.
Yes.
Right. And so,
yeah, I have to be the Miss Perfect CEO. There's no room for error. There's no room for mistakes. But the problem with that is that there's no room for growth.
So you talk.
There's no room for growth. And so there is, go ahead.
And without growth, we lose momentum. You talk about perfectionism recovery. Talk a little bit about that, because I think we all need it.
So the thing about perfectionism, it's another thing that's dressed up to look like it's a positive thing for us. You must be perfect. I remember growing up, I was told good, better, best. I will never rest until my good is better and my better is best. That constant drive for perfection. And this is not about standards. So we'll talk about that very briefly, but perfection is illusionary. It's the ever shifting goalpost that it must be perfect. There can't be any flaws. There can't be this. Even the Hope diamond has some flaws. So the quest for perfection is one that you never will fulfill. And so you live your life with this frustration that you're, again, not good enough because you're not perfect. And so therefore you're always driving yourself harder and harder and harder. And sometimes that quest for perfection will stop you from putting out that manuscript. It will stop you from sharing that blog piece. It will stop you from singing in a choir. It will stop you from doing the things you love to do because you think you have to be perfect. Nobody wants your perfection. People just want you to show up and be authentic.
So Lillian, okay, so with the habits that rob us of our success and our power and perfectionism, what do we do about it? How do we shift? What allows us to shift?
So let's look at the not good enough habit. The one thing is, start by learning to celebrate you. Get to really start seeing you. So you start by seeing who you are. See the good that you do. And this actually is intentional because, again, as women, we're told, don't brag, don't boast. People should, let somebody else, talk about you. You have to learn to talk about you like you would your best friend. You have to learn to celebrate your accomplishments. You have to learn to see your accomplishments. And being able to note it down and say, well, I did this, I did that. This is what I do well. Because then that helps you know what your strengths are. Yeah. And be willing to make room to go, I'm not perfect. So the first thing in the quest to deal with the I'm not good enough is be willing to be softer with yourself. Be willing to be kinder with yourself. Change the language that you use. And it's about being able to learn to celebrate the woman you are right now for all that you've done, all that you've accomplished. But it will force you to have to take a look back on all that you've accomplished. So it comes in with audits of you saying, what do I do well? Even in the book, I give you tasks where you get to talk to friends and family to ask them about who you are, because people normally have different perspective on us from what we think, so that you get a viewpoint that is not from that place of you're not good enough. And it's about changing the lens, it's about changing the mirror, it's about changing what we see. So instead of always looking for our not enoughness, we start looking for what is it that is good enough about me today? What is it that I do well? Where can I celebrate myself? Where can I acknowledge my work? Where can I share something so I get positive feedback? Who do I have in my circle so I get positive feedback? It's about changing the conversation you're having internally with the inner critic. It's about doing all that work so that then you are able to see yourself as enough.
As enough. Makes me want to take a deep breath and just relax, because I think as we successful people have it oddly struggle with some of this more than those who strive less, because we have this inner drive that pushes us all the time. And so to be able to ever sit back and celebrate, give yourself permission to do that, is something that I think a lot of us have difficulty with.
Well, I understand that, especially like I mentioned, especially for women, we're taught we're not supposed to do that because a woman isn't meant to brag. But if you are not celebrating you, let me ask, who would? Who is supposed to? You want someone to blow your trumpet for you to say, oh, this person is amazing. But the only way people are going to know you're amazing is if you can show to say to people, you know what, I did this. This is my work. So something as simple as being in a meeting, let's say you're in a meeting and you're used to having your colleagues take credit for the work that you've presented. It's being able to say, actually, no, I created this. This is my work. I did this. And actually be proud of it, be open and say, yeah, I know that there's no I in team, but Frank has been taking credit for my work for 3 years. So yeah, let's stop that now because, oh yeah, it's a team effort, but Frank did nothing. And I know I'm picking on somebody named Frank, but we'll find another name. But what I'm trying to say is it's being willing to actually stand up for yourself, because as women, we're great standing up for others. We have to be willing to stand up for ourselves as well.
So my sense is that goes into a little bit about what you talk about with bounce back ability. You want to say a little bit about that? Because I love that word, and I don't think we think about it very much.
So bounce back ability is our ability to bounce back, to come back from our setbacks. The truth is we're going to have setbacks. We're going to have moments that are literally going to floor us. Now, it's not about whether do we get floored, is how do we rise? How do we get back? Have we taken the time to learn the lesson and move forward and use the cliche, have we failed forward? Because if you fail forward, you've already moved from where you were. What have you learned in the lesson? Have you done a I come from a project management background. And so at the end of a project, you go, lessons learned. What were your lessons learned? What would you do differently? How would you show up? Who do you need on your team? So your bounce back abilities, it's about how you rise up. It's how you move forward. Because if you fall, and actually it's not if, it's when you fall, you're going to need to learn to rise. And so being able to do it in a way that supports you moving forward, so you don't feel like you cannot step out again into the world. And I had to learn that from my own mistakes of times I'd fallen and gone and not being able to exhale. And I had to learn that I needed to learn the lesson, take the lesson, move forward, change who were on my life team. I needed to have a different life team, and a life team is something that we all need. It's a collection of people who are going to be there to support us, who understand our journey because they've been on similar journeys. They may be mentors, they may be friends, they may be people that you mastermind with that will basically be there to pick you up and go, there, it's hard, we know, but go at it again. We need that life team. Then we also need to, really understand who we are after that experience, because people think, we're taught you fall, just get back on the horse. But if you're the same person that fell the first time, getting back on the horse, you're just going to fall again. So before you get back on the horse, you have to then go, did I learn anything? am I different? If I'm different, then what do I do differently? So if you start thinking, I'm going to be different, then what skills do you need to adopt? What habits do you need to have? What do you need to stop doing? What do you need to give up? So that you can actually get back on that horse differently with the lessons in tow, so you don't fall from the same issue that caused you to fall in the first place.
I love that, Lillian. And I think stopping and learning the lessons, we tend to power into a mistake. And so it's like, okay, let's just do it with 3 times the force. And this time I'll conquer, right? Rather than saying, just a minute, I've got to pause, take a look at what didn't work, change me so it can work. We may pause and reflect, but then that last step of what am I going to change inside me to make it work? Often that we don't do it because it's us. We have to do the work in us.
Yes.
And we like to avoid that, thinking it'll go away, but it never does. So the sooner you deal with it, the better.
Exactly. We're taught, get up, get moving, get up, get moving. And we forget that we have to deal with us. And sometimes it takes a moment. We need to take a moment to put the bandage on. We need to take a moment to heal us. And so that we can actually get back out there. I mean, to use a metaphor, when you think about movies with, I'll use 300 with the Spartans. They have to bandage their wound. They have to take a moment to pick up the dead from the battlefield. They take a moment to get back so they can be stronger. The idea that you just power through and power on is, again, it's a bit of, I think we've been taught incorrectly.
Amazing. Lillian, our time is almost up. And so I just want to ask you, where do we have loose ends? What have we not talked about that you're passionate about that you would like the audience to know? Please share with us.
Well, I think the one thing that I'm definitely passionate about is about women actually stepping into their power and showing up. It's about women actually changing the relationship they have with their inner critic and learning how to change that relationship and take control of it so they don't have an enemy living in their head. I think that's one of the other things I'm passionate about. But I think the one thing I'm definitely passionate about is about women being able to step out and be seen and be powerful and actually love the woman that she is when she steps out. So she has her mojo on, if that's the word she wants to use, on lockdown. So she knows that when she walks into a room, she doesn't have to vanish or shrink down to fit somebody else's idea. It's like, this is all of me. Like it or lump it.
What a beautiful note to end on. Like it or not, this is who I am. And so it should be. Lillian, you have such wonderful, wonderful wisdom. And for those of you who are listening, we will have information about Lillian in the show notes. Information about her books will also be there so that you can get them if you would choose to do so. They are on Amazon, are they, Lillian, or where can they get hold of them?
The Success in High Heels, I believe, is still on Amazon. My Born for This might be still on Kindle because we had to remove it because we were changing editors. But my last book, you can definitely get on my website.
Okay, super. So her website will also be in the show notes, so you can reach her and get her information. And what I love about what you share is the thoughtfulness about, well, what do you do about this? And you are responsible for that shift inside. Otherwise, you will just keep on doing those habits that create roadblocks and diminish the power that you have within you. So I appreciate that perspective very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian, for being with us. And those of you who are with us today on Building My Legacy podcast, thank you. Please remember to visit us on buildtomorrow.com, our website, and also all of our social media sites, which are also buildtomorrow.com. Look forward to talking with you all again very soon.
Bye.
You've been listening to Building My Legacy podcast with Dr. Lois Sonstegard. To book your appointment with Dr. Sonstegard, visit www.buildtomorrow.com.